who weren't able to join us today. And welcome again. My name is Danny Sudman. I'm the founder and executive director of Green Camps. Green Camps is a nonprofit organization that focuses on supporting the camp industry in modeling sustainability so that they can pass on those lessons to the campers and staff impacted by the camp experience each year. Today, we're talking about some research efforts that we conducted, and we moved in to really pursue some research because we felt that having more information and data that will provide some support and inspiration to camps on what the benefits of sustainability are, as well as understanding what's holding camps back from pursuing sustainability. We feel that these research efforts are going to better inform our ability to support the camp industry in modeling sustainability, and excited to continue in these research efforts. So I connected with Lincoln about a year ago through a network of folks through introductions, and Lincoln was gracious enough to take on a group of students and lead a research project to, again, better understand what the barriers and motivators camps are experiencing in pursuing sustainability. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on over to Lincoln. And I did want to actually, do an introduction of Lincoln as well before we pass it off. Dr. Lincoln Larson uses a variety of social science methods to understand human environment interactions and address natural resource management and conservation issues. His human dimensions research questions and projects focus on three broad themes: natural resource management and conservation, outdoor recreation and health, and environmental education and stewardship, that are designed to help scientists, land managers, and the general public understand, communicate, and collaboratively respond to emerging challenges facing parks and protected areas. Dr. Larson's recent work has focused on many different topics. Again, thank you so much, Lincoln, for joining us, and I'll pass the baton over to you.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks, everybody, for coming. That was a better introduction than I could provide for myself there, so I appreciate that, Danny. He's going to go ahead and make me a co-host so I can activate a few polls here momentarily. And there we go. Let's see if I got it. Brilliant. So hopefully y'all can all see my slide, just a slide here. Give me a thumbs up, Danny, or anybody else if you're good.
Looks good.
Brilliant. And it's nice to see some familiar names and faces out there, just a couple that I've crossed paths with in the past, which is exciting as well. To reiterate Danny's point, this idea for this project was inspired not by me, but by Danny and by the team of students you see listed on here as co-authors, undergraduate students who were environmental science students at NC State. And they are the ones that kind of led this effort to understand what it looks like to go green in the camp world and to identify some of these potential motivations and barriers that camps face as they embark on a path to sustainability. So I'm excited to share some results of this project with you all here today. If you have questions, Danny alluded to this before, I think, but just feel free to drop them in the chat as we go, and we'll kind of take a look at those. I might answer them real time. I'll keep an eye on that. We might just answer them there at the end. But please feel free, while it's on your mind, to go ahead and pop it in the chat, and we can discuss then. All right. Why sustainable camps? I think most of you, if you're here today, have a pretty good sense of why this issue is important. Just a quick recap with that in mind. Sustainable camps benefit the environment. Certainly, if we can become more sustainable in our practices, we're reducing our ecological footprint, we're maintaining the environmental quality that a lot of our organizations and campers depend on. Sustainable camps also benefit society, teaching diverse youth and adults the importance of sustainable living. And camps are really unique in their capacity to serve as role models to model those effective sustainability practices. And finally, sustainable camps ultimately benefit camps, improving efficiency of operations. They can reduce maintenance costs. So if you're really interested in the triple bottom line, sustainability is a key way to achieve a lot of those goals. So in this study, in the survey, what we wanted to do is answer these questions. to what extent are current camp operations sustainable across the United States? And what are the motivations and barriers influencing integration of sustainable practices in the camp world? So to do this, we conducted a web survey in spring 2021 with camp organizations across the United States. And we posted this on listservs, we circulated via ACA and other groups, and we requested that we get one response per camp organization. And we ended up getting about 118 people who completed the entire survey on behalf of their organizations. And I'm going to show you who is in this group in just a minute. And I'm going to ask you, where you might fit out here in the audience today in this group here momentarily as well. But I do want to mention before I do that what the survey instrument focused on. We looked at camp attributes, kind of describing the camps themselves. We asked about sustainable practices across 5 main categories, and these are categories that also align with a lot of the things that Danny has done in his work with green camps and other organizations are pursuing. And those 5 are pictured here on the right, and I'll say a little bit more about what each of them encompass here momentarily. But sustainability, education and communication, purchasing and procurement, waste management, energy and water consumption, and natural resource and wildlife conservation. And as I alluded to earlier, we're really interested in those motivations for engaging in sustainable practices and also some of these barriers to sustainability. So I'm going to dive into now who was in our sample. But before I do that, I just want to poll everybody to see in our attendance makeup here today, where you fit in to these different categories. So if you could just take a second here to respond and indicate which of these categories best describes your organization. And if you're not on there, there's another option as well, if you prefer that. So I'll give everybody a minute to respond. I will share results here in about 10 seconds.
And if you find yourself in the other category, we just wanted to, we know we have a diverse audience here, but if you're comfortable and willing, if you want to share what that other category is as well, welcome to share that in the chat window.
Here's who we are on our call today. Every group, every category represented. So a range of different types of camps and camp partners that exist out there. And as Danny said, if you are in the other category representing a different type of organization, feel free to disclose that if you feel comfortable doing so. How does this compare, you might wonder, to the survey, the groups that we surveyed in our sample? I'll show you that here in a second. Our sample included one response from all 50 states, including Puerto Rico as well. And respondents were mostly camp administrators, but we also had some program and facility managers, mostly single location camps. Most offered overnight options with a mix of rural and urban camp settings. So a pretty wide range of the camp industry, if you will, that also is encapsulated by the diversity of participants on this call, which I see included some faith-based camps as well. Also, a variety of camp structures were integrated in the responses here. About a third were independent not-for-profit camps, like some of you all out there. About 40% were affiliated not-for-profit camps, so linked to organizations like Scouts or YMCA. And about a quarter were for-profit camps, which some of you on the call represent as well. Different sizes, about a third or 40% less than 500 annual campers, and then another 40% with 1,000 or more, and some even a lot more than that. And a lot of camps, about a third, had more than 20% of campers on scholarship. So a lot of diversity on that front as well. Before I get into the results, I'm going to ask you another poll question here. And this one has to do with motivations, maybe your motivation for being here in the first place. So this is very similar to the question we asked on the actual survey. If you could just take a second to indicate which of these categories of potential reasons for becoming more sustainable or engaging sustainable practices is the most important reason for you moving in that direction. And this could be you personally and what motivates you, or as part of your larger organization, if you know kind of which direction you want to go as a group. And I'll give everybody a couple more seconds to respond to that one before I share results. Okay, looks like almost everybody has responded. So we have a relatively even split between, if y'all can see the results there, hopefully, the environmental reasons for doing so, to protect natural resources, to minimize environmental impacts, and then the social reasons to do the right thing and set a good example for the community. And nobody said economic reasons, interestingly enough, were most important. So how does that compare to the larger sample that we have of camp organizations across the country? I'm sure you're wondering, so let me show you. Very similar, actually, with environmental reasons dominating and social reasons coming in second, economic reasons far down the line. That said, about 50% of respondents did say economic reasons were very important. But if you have to pick the most important reason, it was predominantly environmental reasons for engaging in these practices. And this has implications for how we talk about sustainability, both within and outside our own organizations in terms of what might motivate people to act. And so it's just an interesting snapshot to understand that there's lots of different reasons people might go down this path. It's important to understand the diversity of reasons and which ones might resonate more with certain groups versus others. Let's take a look now at current participation nationwide in sustainable practices among camps. And here are the 5 categories I mentioned a minute ago. Each of them were composed, as we measure them, with a few different actions, and I'll show you what those different actions or behaviors were here in a minute. But what the gist of this is showing you that of all the different categories of sustainability, the one that camps are most likely to be doing right now pertain to waste management. Second would be sustainability, education, and communication. Natural resource conservation would be third, and purchasing and procurement and energy and water consumption are on down the line, as you can see there, with less than 20% of camps saying they're doing this stuff all the time. And so what does that mean in terms of specific activities? I'm going to take you through each of these categories one by one. And so there are lots of items here, but I'll try to pull out the main points as we go through it. Oh, I'm seeing the chat now. Elise is like, wait, you're making me choose just one of these options. We did give people in the survey an opportunity to choose all of them if they wanted, but we forced people to pick one just to see what they'd say. So waste management. Here are the list of practices, as you can see on the left side here, ranging from things like disposing of toxic chemicals, reusing resources, recycling. And a lot of camps are doing this, at least, if not some of the time, all the time. Things like composting food waste and handling kitchen waste was more variable, and camps were less likely to do this on a consistent basis when it comes to waste management. And so you could start to see things camps are doing well and potential areas for improvement, particularly with respect to food waste and how kitchen waste is being handled. In terms of sustainability, education, and communication, you can see that a whole lot of camps are really working hard to help campers develop an appreciation for the natural world. It's embedded in our missions and a lot of other things that we do, which makes total sense. Setting expectations and educating both campers and staff is something that a lot of camps are doing, but not necessarily all the time. And then if you move down to actually measuring and monitoring some of these impacts, very few camps nationwide are doing that. So we're trying to do as much of this as possible, but we're doing not as effective at actually measuring the impacts of what we're doing. And any of you that have been in the research and evaluation world know both how important that is and how challenging it can be. So there's a lot of reasons why we're not necessarily doing that. In terms of natural resource and wildlife conservation, here you start to see less green on all of these graphs if we move through the categories here. Camps generally are attempting to minimize environmental degradation wherever possible. So this is a priority for a lot of organizations. Pollution reduction, whether you're talking about noise or light or air and water, it's harder to do, particularly on a smaller scale. So you see a lot of variability there. Same with kind of land stewardship practices. And so some camps do this well, others not so much. Purchasing and procurement, this happens, but it's not the norm. You can see much smaller dark green bars of camps who do this all the time, even smaller when you talk about not just purchasing green products, but organic or eco-friendly food specifically. And you saw in an earlier slide, perhaps, that not that many camps are growing food on site either. And there are obviously some limitations linked to that. So this is happening. Certainly more of it could be happening. And this is an area when we talk about resources and opportunities we might return to think about, what are some strategies for perhaps doing a bit more of this kind of thing. And then the fifth category, where you see the most red of all, is energy and water consumption. And so a lot of people stated in open-ended responses that energy efficiency is important, but what can you really do as a single camp organization on a grand scale? And so what you see here is a lot of small scale solutions, which do matter in aggregate. Energy efficient appliances, low flow showers and toilets are a couple of examples. But when it comes to other things such as renewable energy sources or fuel efficient vehicles or reusing rainwater or gray water, not many camps are doing this on a consistent basis at all. So there's definitely a lot of room for improvement on the energy and water consumption front. Moving from current practices to future ambitions, one of the things we asked everybody was, how interested would you be in getting more information about how to make operations more sustainable? And most people who responded were very interested. And this may not fully represent the whole camp world. Granted, only if you respond to the survey, you're more interested in this inherently. Nevertheless, because of the diverse range of camps out there represented in our survey, we think there is substantial interest in becoming more sustainable in the camp industry and getting resources and tools to help do that. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask you another polling question here. This one relates to the 5 categories we've been talking about. And it's very similar to the survey question we asked. And now I'd like to know, of the 5 different areas that we talked about that are listed here, if you had to pick 2, Elise, I'm sorry, I'm forcing you to pick again. Please forgive me. If you had to pick 2, which of these 2 would you pick to prioritize within your organization going forward? And I realize this requires a higher level of thought, so I'll give you a few extra seconds on this one. I know, I'm forcing you to pick. It's very hard. It makes it more fun to see the responses than if we had 100% saying all 5, which is probably what we would get if I didn't force you. And again, after I share your results here in about 10 seconds, we have a few people who haven't responded. Then I will show you how it compares to what the national survey showed. All right, last call for responses. Okay. So have a look at that. Every category represented here on the call with sustainability, education, and communication leading the charge, but at least 5 responses in all the other categories. So clearly we're thinking broadly about not just sustainability as a whole, but also dimensions that matter to us in our organizations and where we'd like to improve. And that's where Danny and Green Camps and some of the resources that he has and ideas he has will really be helpful, I think. So how does this compare to what we saw on the national survey in terms of future sustainable practices? Well, I got a lot of information on these next 2 slides, but all I want you to look at here are the blue bars, because they indicate how many camps, what percentage of camp respondents said they want to do more of this in the future. Definitely is dark blue, maybe is light blue. And you can see for waste management, sustainability education, a whole lot of camps definitely want to do more of this. If I shift to those other 3 categories, you'll see a little less blue, but still a whole lot of blue for camps that definitely want to engage in these activities going forward. And to pull those together and synthesize back to the poll that, similar to the poll that you just showed, these are the rankings of prioritization across categories in order of the percent that rated it definitely stuff that they want to do. Waste management, sustainability, education were the top 2, but the other 3 were pretty high on that list. You can see all above 70% there. And in terms of the ranking priority, which is what you just had to force to do there, and Sarah wanted 3. I know, I'm sorry, I'll give you 3 next time. You can see 72%, just like you all had, sustainability, education, communication in those top 2. But the others varied again, with purchasing, procurement a bit lower, but still a number of camps wanted that as well. So you can see a lot of interest across categories, both within our audience today and nationally. So that's great. Let's do it. However, we all know there are a lot of barriers to doing these things. And so we also asked about some of those barriers. And this list is probably not surprising to you either. With lack of resources leading the charge here as moderate or major barriers, whether that's financial resources or technological resources. And sure, that's certainly a challenge. But there are a lot of other things on this list too that are substantial barriers for a number of camps as well. Tatiana, do you have a question, or is that just a mic issue? Okay. I never know on Zoom. You can see some of the other things on there, not having the networks, not having the connections to perhaps do this, maybe just lacking awareness of opportunities to become more sustainable. It's a substantial barrier to a lot of camps as well. And so you can probably see some of the barriers you face on this list, and we could talk more about those later as well. If we distill these down into 2 categories, we see that lack of resources is the big one, with 90% rating as a minor barrier or higher. But awareness, lacking the authority to act, having the right personnel and training, that's a really big barrier for a lot of folks as well. And so that's important to keep in mind. And then my last polling question for you with respect to barriers, I'm just more curious about this one than just for fun. But how has COVID impacted your camp's ability to prioritize and engage in practices that enhance environmental sustainability? And again, after you weigh in on this one, has it helped or hindered your ability to do so, essentially? After you weigh in, I'll show results for the national sample. So I'll give everyone a few more seconds to respond if you haven't yet. All right. So here's what you said. And perhaps not surprisingly, a number of you said it hindered or decreased your ability to become more sustainable, probably due to capacity issues. But in some cases, it also created new opportunities. Maybe when you didn't have, campers you were attending to 24/7, there's more time to think about other stuff. And we certainly saw this in the national sample too. So it's a mixed bag, like everything else with these pandemic years. Hang on 1 second, clear that out of the way. This is what the national sample said. Very similar to what you reported there. 2/3 said there was a decreased ability. For other folks, either no change or actually an increase their capacity to focus on sustainability, which is something they might not have been spending as much time with previously. So I know there's a lot of information to process in a short period of time. Let me say one more thing about comparing different types of camps. Since we did have lots of different camps represented, we didn't honestly see a lot of differences in responses across types of camps. One of the things that did jump out was that affiliated not-for-profit camps were less likely to engage in sustainable practices and more likely to report barriers. And that may be because they had less decision-making authority. This is just speculation on my part. Some of that came up in the open-ended responses. There might be other reasons why that's the case, but it's definitely something to keep in mind, particularly if you fall within that category in terms of how you might navigate those extra layers of barriers when you're moving in this direction. And thanks for those of you who are adding extra notes about COVID. We can come back to those later as well, because I think that's an important topic for conversation. A few other things to note in terms of differences: camps with overnight facilities were a little more likely to engage. Camps in urban areas were a little bit more likely to engage. And we didn't really see any differences at all based on camp size. So we thought there'd be bigger differences there, but not so much. So size, in this case, maybe doesn't matter as much when it comes to achieving some of these sustainability goals. So wrapping up, what can we take home from this, which again is just a small representation of camps across the country. So we can't necessarily put too much in this, but I think it's a really interesting snapshot of where we stand in the camp world with sustainability. A bunch of camps are already doing this, and waste management, sustainability education in particular, have been emphasized in many camps across the country. That said, almost all camps want to do more. And that includes stuff like purchasing and procurement practices, but also just monitoring what they're currently doing to demonstrate impacts and perhaps approve and adapt going forward. More could be done on that front, on the monitoring front as well. We talked about the motivations, and if you had to pick, environmental, social reasons might be the primary reasons you do it. Economic reasons are less common, but still really important in that triple bottom line sense to a lot of camp organizations when making the argument for sustainability. And perceived lack of resources, the biggest barrier to sustainability, and financial resources are a big piece of that. The comment there from Jen in the chat kind of speaks to this, especially in the wake of COVID, how this has become an even more magnified challenge of resources that is. And maybe Danny can speak a bit to that and how we might get around some of those things. But awareness, training, there are other things out there that prevent us from doing more of this if we want. But basically, in a nutshell, there is strong interest in making camp sustainability a high, if not higher, priority, if it's already existing in some places. And there are lots of avenues that we can take to do that. And that's where green camps and other groups come in. Here's contact information for me and for Danny. I assume you have his since you're here already. But if you have questions about these specific results, please feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'd be happy to talk about what we've got in more detail. And this is just some of them we're sharing here today. We don't have a publication related to this, an extension report or anything that you could use. We're working on that, but we can share these slides too if anybody's interested in getting this information. So you have it in hand. With that, I will stop talking and I will pitch it back here to Danny. And if y'all have specific questions about the research at this point, I think we should have time, a little bit of time for that, right, Danny?
Yeah, that's right. First off, just thanks, Lincoln, again, for presenting and sharing all this information. And yeah, I want to open up the table for anyone that has any questions, specifically research related, but anything in the realm of camp sustainability, I think is fair game to share out. So yeah, I'll open the table up for that. Feel free to unmute your mic, or if you rather, you can drop them in the chat window as well.
Danny, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Sarah.
Okay, I'm Sarah. I work at one of the camps owned by NC State University through Cooperative Extension and 4-H. So my master's is sustainable tourism, and my project was toward green camps. I still have a lot of communication obstacles of trying to share what sustainability and the three-pronged approach is, because of a lot of people that I talk to thinks sustainability is just about dollars and a bottom line. So any resources that could help me communicate that would be greatly appreciative. And we're just in a place that I'm holding on to that sustainability plan that I created during my graduate school, and just seeing, certifications like the Green Seal, and that sort of thing. And just like Tom Rhodes is on the call, being part of Green Travel, I understand how that all that kind of stuff really helps. So I guess I wanted to share all that because of the obstacles I have. But the one question I do have is there any additional support, whether it's monthly meeting or an association I'm not aware of, that I could actually talk to other people to help me make this go further with all the 4-H camps in North Carolina?
Yeah, well, thank you for your question, Sarah, and as well for your efforts in putting that sustainability plan together. That's actually a big component of what Green Camps is encouraging folks to do. We are, as an organization, we are working to build up kind of that network of camp professionals to be able to engage with other like-minded professionals, similar to where you're at, where you're a champion of that movement and you've got a lot of resources and knowledge and experience that would be valuable to other camps, not only in our region here, but globally, if you will, for all the camps looking to pursue sustainability. So we do have a Facebook group for Green Camps. That's one way that we've started to open up communication lines through that at Go Green Camps. And then we've also connected with the American Camp Association to build a listserv out on sustainability through there. And then our online community, which I'll talk a little bit more about, is how we're driving our certification program. So we have put together a 5-step process that builds a framework for camps to pursue sustainability. And actually the sustainability plan, as you mentioned, is one of those 5 steps in order to really build that framework and create systems that will allow you to grow your efforts in there, from communicating with key stakeholders within your organization, folks outside of your organization that might be able to support your efforts and help communicate those ideas out as well. So I think that's a good start. And, I think having monthly meetings could be a good opportunity to put some networks together in order to just open up the dialogue around sustainability. So that's something I'd love to connect with you about and talk and see if that might be of interest of other folks to put together regular meetings on that. But as I mentioned, kind of our focus is with that certification program to start building that framework so that you can take that plan that you've implemented and be able to expand it out and actually put it into place. But I see where having other folks to connect with and engage and share, this is where our plan is, this is what we're trying to accomplish. These are the barriers that we're running into, as we just discussed, that there are a lot of barriers that even if you have a really good plan in place, there's probably some things that are keeping you from being able to really implement that plan successfully. I'd open it up to anyone else in the meeting as well, as far as looking for resources and networks. Does that seem like either would be an opportunity to help overcome barriers? Does anyone have any other networks that they're a part of?
Tom Rhodes here. I just wanted to mention that if you log on to www.ncgreentravel.org, you can see all of our listings in our program. We would love to develop an application for our program to promote sustainable camping. And if there are any camps that would like to join in the NC Green Travel initiative, you can use the application for attractions, and that would work great for right now, or natural nature-based camping, nature-based travel. So that would be a great idea if you want to do that. And just check out our website, ncgreentravel.org.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that resource, Tom. I see Amy posted a question about how to access the listserv. Unfortunately, it's not super active right now. That's one of the things that I think Green Camps is really focusing on. Our 2-pronged focus right now is outreach education and our certification program. And so we really want to build the conversation around sustainability. So one of the things that we were able to do was launch a sustainability listserv. So if you log into the ACA Connect, you can search and find that. It's a separate category. Unfortunately, it's not right out front, but it is available if you look through there. It's a little challenging to get a direct link into that listserv, but we can see if we can maybe make that more accessible as well.
Can I pose a question?
Yeah, please do, Hannah.
Okay. Hi, my name is Hannah Bell. I'm a graduate student at UNC Wilmington with a master's in environmental studies is what I'm pursuing. Currently, I'm doing research with Dr. Frensley at the university. And so my question is for Dr. Larson. When you look at your research and you have, this first set of surveys, has there been any thought about implementing kind of an adaptive management strategy similar to what we do in program evaluation, where you have this first survey, maybe you enter some green camps, modifications to their sustainability practices in those categories, and then you survey them again and compare the results and see if those modifications have made their programs more sustainable, or maybe even their perspective of sustainability has changed?
Yeah, Hannah, thanks. That's a great question. It actually relates to a question Stephanie posed earlier about metrics used to track sustainability successes or failures, as the case may be. I think there is great interest in doing that, as we've seen from some of the survey results. And that's something that Danny might be able to speak to a bit more as part of what Green Camps would like to do, ideally with various audit mechanisms and ways you can kind of track your own sustainability journey throughout the process and make it fit your context. And I think that if we, once we get along those lines, more to that point, absolutely, we can build in more tools for measuring changes over time that will help us identify interventions, strategies that work, which ones need some additional effort and improvement. And so this isn't, we're not envisioning this as a one-off study. It's something that we hope serves as a springboard to much deeper and more prolonged engagement with sustainability in the camp world.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I'll add on to that, from the research component, we really feel that research is going to bring a lot of value in multiple ways, right? To better understand those practices of camps and then also track the impact of them implementing solutions. It's a challenging feat to accomplish because sustainability is so broad. And we work with, camp is such a loosely it's a defined term, if you will. I mean, day camps and resident camps and outdoor education programs. And so as we develop how we're going to help camps track the impact of their the green actions that they're implementing, that's what we're working to determine. On the call are a couple of representatives from our certification committee, which is helping guide the development of that program. And so we're really looking at data collection in order to understand where camps are at from the beginning, support them in establishing baselines and measuring what their initial consumption of energy, water, their waste production, so that they can move forward, implement actions, and then we can measure the changes in that. Now, I say that's the vision, right? Like it's a lot of work to get to that point. And it also, what those actions look like are going to highly vary based on the specific opportunities and needs each camp has. I saw that Elise had posted a comment about a local organization that they had put together. Having local groups of folks can be really helpful. On the national level, I think there's some benefit just to see what folks are doing, but we know regionally different camps are going to have different resources to access. They're also going to have different challenges that they're overcoming. If you look at camps in like the Southwest versus camps in the Northeast, the water issues are going to be different. There's still going to be water issues, but the issues they're facing are going to be a little bit different. So our goal is to use this research to really define the problem so that we can better provide resources as well as access grants and finances. As we saw from the research results, that financial resources or lack thereof were one of the biggest barriers that camps were facing. And so if we can use resource, and especially as we move forward and we can gather data that helps create that case for support, that camps are a really great educational opportunity to connect with their local communities and really demonstrate what sustainability means and looks like from an educational standpoint. I think we can replicate those ideas that campers will take back into their home communities. So
in terms of I was gonna say, in terms of metrics, Amy, your example there is great at showing that information posted there in chat about some of the stuff you might think about, both from an internal monitoring standpoint, but also an external role modeling standpoint, as Danny was alluding to. I think those are just some examples. And back to your question, Stephanie, about specifics. If there's something you're really interested in, Danny Greencamp, we can help you figure out what you should be or could be measuring to assess that. And I will return to Elise's point, which is a great one. And it makes me think of other research I've done looking at how local governments are building capacity to respond to environmental change. And we looked at local governments across, this was when I was up in New York State, looking at how they're responding to climate change or hydrofracking, which was a big deal at the time, less so now, but probably will resurface again. And the one factor that mattered the most for local governments in dealing effectively with all these changes was not financial resources. It wasn't internal staff capacity. It was local networks and who they knew in other places and how they exchange information across those networks. And I think the same kind of thing is true in this context too, both at the local and then larger scale, in terms of, you're not in it alone. You're not in it alone. You've got lots of other people and resources you can rely on. So if you want to move down this path, don't hesitate to reach out and cultivate that network.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we see that, I've heard so much in the industry around sustainability that there are so many resources, and there's a lot of people that you connect with. And Tom, thanks for sharing your resources, and other folks. I see, Amy, you put up some information about what you've been working on. And so we know that it can be overwhelming. Sustainability just as a concept. And when I present at a lot of conferences, I'll start by saying we can all agree that sustainability is important, and most people are going to nod their heads in agreement. But what we can't really understand per se is what sustainability means and what it looks like. Now, I think most people can define sustainability in terms of what makes sense to them. So what influences, what experiences have you had that help you define sustainability in your terms? And I think that's okay. I think that we really embrace that idea of sustainability can mean a lot of things and look a lot differently to different people. And so I think that goes into the approach that we've created. So I want to, again, please keep the questions coming in, but I just wanted to share a little bit about the approach that Green Camps has put together based off of the years of development, the conversations we've had with camp professionals in overcoming some of these barriers to camp sustainability. So I think first off, you can tell that I have a thing for Legos. I wrote a blog post, and I think Legos are a great tool for a metaphor in building that framework. Like, we've got an array of different sizes and types and pieces that we can put together and build in so many different ways. So really starting at the beginning of your journey, what does that path look like? And again, I think we can all agree that there's some similarities, but we really want to help camps take the steps in better understanding what that path looks like for them. So I think the first thing is understanding the resources as well as the challenges that are presented as you go through this journey. And the knowledge, the staff, the skills, the buy-in, the money, the time, and of course, campers. At the end of the day, how are we leveraging our opportunity as camp professionals and educational organizations to inspire green behavior change in our campers, to send them home with the tools and knowledge and resources to bring those ideas back to their homes from the things that they've experienced at camp. So the first thing we talk about is data collection. So our green survey, ask questions, and I think even from the research that we're doing, hopefully by camps participating in that research and answering questions about waste and water and energy, they're going to start to see the opportunities that they could potentially be pursuing. As overwhelming as it might be, you get a good sense of the actions that you could potentially be taking, or maybe that you're already taking, and you can pat yourself on the back and celebrate the things that you're already doing that would be considered sustainable. And then what resources do you have or need to implement those? I think deeper dives into data can help establish baselines. So understanding, if you're going to try to reduce your water consumption, say your goal is to reduce water consumption next summer, that doesn't really allow for establishing success and matrix around what you are accomplishing by reducing water. Whereas if you know what your water consumption is from summer to summer, you can establish goals that say reduce water consumption by 5% and really provide measurable outcomes to kind of support those, as well as the return on investment opportunities. If we're reducing energy and water and even waste streams, there are some financial incentives behind those as well. And then lastly, I think this data is going to help research efforts. And as I mentioned before, hopefully support the funding efforts, not only to organizations that are providing resources and support, but also directly to camps to help them overcome that big barrier that we saw earlier. So breaking that down, after collecting some data and having a sense of sustainability opportunities, we look at the idea of forming a green team. I work in facilitation and team building, as well as in the sustainability sector, and finding ways to incorporate this idea of green team building. Camps already do a great job of facilitating team experiences and challenges. So if we can bring folks to the table, if you will, by my little picture here, and start that conversation. So, not only having program staff, but support staff, board members, campers are great to incorporate in there. I've seen green teams that have camper parents that are involved in there to bring those ideas to the table and really establish and build out that sustainability plan for those efforts. You'll also notice that there are other individuals included in this list that might be outside of your direct organization that could provide really great support and resources and insight as you move through this process. And as always, how do you incorporate the campers? At the end of the day, how is this process, how are these efforts going to benefit the campers that we're serving to bring those ideas home? So one of the new pieces that we've incorporated as out of the outcomes of our sustainability certification committee is a sustainability plan that will create a vision, establish SMART goals. I'm sure you've probably heard of that, an acronym before, and then also find ways to model sustainability and inspire. So giving you a plan, something tangible to work off of to set and measure your goals. An example of that, I know that somebody had mentioned their plan that had come into play. This is one of the camps we work with, Use Dan Sustainability. This is their sustainability strategy. And you can see they divided up some of their main goals. This is from 2020. And if we look, we'll just dive into one real quick, the Achieve Zero Waste to Landfill by 2025. What an amazing, huge goal to be perceiving or to be going after. But if you break that down into annual kind of individual tasks, you can create those sub goals that will allow you to move forward. And so that's where that plan comes into play, that their 2020 goal was to complete a waste assessment of their initial waste, and this includes the task to get there. So by taking those large, sometimes overwhelming goals and breaking them down, it can make them more achievable. And then also, again, your green team going through the process of understanding what are the most achievable and most important opportunities there. And then I think one of the other things, this network that we're building, if we share the successes and challenges and opportunities that are coming from what camps are able to accomplish, I think it can really inspire the industry to latch onto these ideas and begin to replicate some of those and really move forward in that. This is from a camp in Arkansas that has one of the largest straw bale huts in the United States. I don't know where they are numbers wise right now, but it was a big community endeavor and really an amazing feat to put this together to demonstrate alternative building techniques that came through that. This is a camp and outdoor program in Irvine, California. They take their citrus from their citrus orchard and they would bring it to the farmer's market down the road. Unfortunately, fires, I think, kind of destroyed all their citrus grove, but an interesting way to take some of your green actions and use those to connect with your local community. These are two 40-gallon solar water heaters that I bought off of Craigslist and shipped them out to Catalina Island where I was working. We installed them on the roof of this boys' shower house, and it just created a really robust education opportunity to teach our campers about solar water heating. This is a stove where there are copper pipes that run through the bottom of this wood fire stove. They cooked a meal. It was a delicious meal. And as it was cooking the meal, the heat from the fire heated up the water in the copper pipes and sent it to the water storage tank here. And then we used that to clean dishes after the meal. and just a really great connection and opportunity to engage our campers in there. So I want to throw these up there just as kind of moving forward and opportunities to join and support the Sustainable Camps movement. We do have a free guide to starting a green team, which I think is one of the most important steps that you can take in bringing people to the table and starting that conversation and understanding where those opportunities lie. Then creating a sustainability plan. We are working on a free tool that would support any organization in creating that sustainability plan, which is very overwhelming task, I imagine, to take the steps to form that plan. And we hope that we can take some of the barriers out of that. And then, of course, just direct support of Green Camps, joining as a member, lots of volunteer opportunities. As I mentioned, we have some advisory board members on the call today, as well as some of our certification committee members on there. There are lots of great ways to support with your time, and then donations as well to help support Green Camps and expanding our capacity and ability to support the Sustainable Camps movement. So I thank you everybody for attending. I do want to keep the time open for any additional questions that you might have from this, or again, kind of latching off of the research that Lincoln shared. But thank you again, everyone, for attending, and I'll open it up to questions or comments.
While people are processing, I just want to jump back to something Sarah said too that I was thinking about as you were talking to Danny. That's how to communicate this message so that it resonates with lots of different people to get buy-in, and this notion that it only, only if you can do it in economic terms does it matter to certain people. And I think that's a misconception. Don't get me wrong, economic stuff is really important. But as we've seen, not just from the survey, but other stuff out there in the world, especially camps are uniquely positioned as role models in this realm of sustainability for communities, for the campers they serve, both youth and adults. And so embracing kind of this, you may not call it a moral imperative, but this opportunity that we have to be leaders when it comes to sustainability, both for environmental and social reasons, is really important. And I don't think that we should undersell that and put all our eggs in the economic basket. Not saying we should ignore it, but I think understanding how to communicate, not just through that financial lens, but across all these different components, is really important going forward.
Yeah, thanks, Ligon. Yeah, I think education is such a great opportunity that we can really leverage to inspire our future generations to take on things like this and pursue green jobs and address some of the challenges there. Ligon, it looks like you have a question from Elise.
Yeah, about how the students got involved. So Danny pitched the idea to me, and it sounded interesting. Our environmental science students at NC State have capstone projects every year, and we propose projects, and they choose which ones they want to pursue. And this one attracted a lot of attention. We just put together a one-pager about the idea, and it had more students signed up for it than any project I've been a part of in the past. So I think, and it was across environmental engineering students and across a lot of disciplines, which is really neat as well. And I know a few of them are we've kept tabs on some of them in the year since we did this when they graduated, and a lot of them are going into sustainability careers, albeit in different sectors, not necessarily the camp world, but still really passionate about these topics. And I think that just speaks to how it's how it's permeating all aspects of society.
Yeah, and I will say that I got to attend their presentation of their project, and I felt so bad for the group of students that had to go after them. I feel like they set the bar so high, and there was such great response from that group. So they were wonderful to work with. Awesome. Well, great. I will stick around. I think Lincoln stick around for a couple more minutes. If anyone has any follow-up questions or anything, please feel free again to reach out. I'll follow up with an email with mine and Lincoln's information, as well as ability to check out the recording or kind of the follow-up with this information. And thank you again, everybody, for joining. And I wish you the best as you move forward in your sustainability endeavors and whatever that looks like. And please do feel free to utilize Green Camps as a resource in whatever capacity we can support you in those efforts. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Yeah, Sarah, definitely a challenge of working within an organization is that higher up. I think that was one of those main barriers that came up as far as getting buy-in and support from higher level folks in the organization. I think bringing outside perspectives in can be really helpful. I've sat in and led a couple green team meetings, and bringing an outside perspective, I think, can often add or support that. But as you mentioned as well, just finding other resources and things to inspire that.
This workshop will give me a new fresh breath just to remind everybody of everything we've done. So, and what we can do with it.
Awesome. Yeah, and Elise, reach out. I'd love to connect with you and learn more. I'd love to see your sustainability plan you've put together, and maybe I can provide some support and help push your organization to pursue some of those other things as well.
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you. The result from the study that was showing that affiliated nonprofit camps were the ones who demonstrated the largest barriers to sustainability was actually pretty validating, because it's been,
Sorry.
I was like, yeah, and I wrote it down as a note. It's just like, yeah, it's hard. Everybody has barriers, but I just feel like it's kind of an uphill battle, especially when you're part of a large organization. But I actually did have, yeah, Danny, I would love to talk more, but I have one specific question, which is something I'm really working on right now, which is like strategies for getting buy-in from our general counselors specifically, so who are like older teens and younger 20s. Like all of them would say, oh yeah, this matters. But then a lot of times in their actions, they're not modeling the sorting your waste or like composting in the ways that we would really like to see, so that all the campers get excited about it. And like, I don't want to force somebody to be excited about something or tell them they need to believe that this is important. So I don't know. I know you can't like answer that right away, but like, that's an issue I'm dealing with right now.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. So I can direct you to a blog post that I wrote that you can send to your staff about modeling green behavior.
Yeah.
And it's just simple things, right? And understanding the power that counselors have. I mean, when kids look at their counselors, they're like, oh my gosh, you are super man/woman/person, and I'll do whatever, I'll model your behaviors to the end of the world and back again. And so I think helping them understand the impact of their influence on campers can really influence that. I would also say inviting camp staff to be a part of the green team and giving them some, not leverage, but a voice, like to hear like what's important to you and where should we focus. Because if you cast a wide net on what you want them to model, it's going to be really challenging. Like, we want you to do this and this and this and this.
Yeah.
Whereas if you bring them and say, what should we be focusing on, and allow them to focus, to share what those are, they're the ones setting those expectations. And then they're going to be more likely, in my experience at least, to follow through with that. And then lastly, I would say, think about a staff training module. How can you do that?
Yeah. We're working on it. Trying to figure out like what are the best strategies for staff training that are actually going to build excitement and buy-in. And I think part of it at a camp is with the rules is always bribery. Like there's always gonna be some like, or like a cool t-shirt or something. But and then also, so I think we're working on trying to like get more input from them in general, like you said, to have them dictate what they care about. But we're also looking at this idea, and this is the same with the way I'm kind of approaching our management, because sometimes I feel like I have to bribe them with financial incentives to actually prioritize this stuff. But looking at doing something at staff training that's like, hey, you guys, if we cut down this amount of food waste first session, this is how much money we're saving off of our food budget. What do you guys want to do with that money? That's like, just so they see a direct impact in that way, just like as an additional strategy. I don't know, it feels kind of like sleazy, but I'm gonna try it.
Well, I mean, food and money, like those are always good incentives, right, to do that.
Right.
I know when I was a camper, we had the super scraper, and we would scrape our plates into a bucket and weigh it, and they would penalize the entire camp if our food waste was over a certain weight. they'd take away an item from the store. So we could get 2 items from the store. And if we were over a certain weight, they would drop 1 item. If it was really bad, they would drop both and we wouldn't even get store, which I don't know I would condone now. Like,
Oh my gosh.
This was years ago as a camper, but I mean, I remember that. Like, it was very impactful, and it you know, it made us focus a little bit more on that aspect of our food waste. But we also have to be careful because we don't want to make kids feel uncomfortable, like they can't,
Right.
you know, like, we want you to eat whatever you need to eat. We want this to be a safe space.
I was just saying,
Right.
going to create eating disorders that
Yeah,
way.
food is
Yeah.
complicated in so many ways anyways. That's so funny. But so was that motivated for your camp? Was that motivated by environmental priorities or financial? Or do you even know?
You know, I don't know. I was like a peon counselor at that point. So I had no say in that. And I didn't really know much sustainability stuff at that point. So I would imagine some of it was probably just environmental, but waste as well. But, you know, in that regard, we had like family style where you go get food from the kitchen. So I don't know that it would necessarily reduce our waste on the outside, because in the kitchen, I guess they could save leftovers a little bit more if people didn't take more of them. But yeah, I think I have a lot of activities and games and things as well that I've taken traditional team building activities and translated them into green team building, where you present a problem, the group has fun, works together, try to overcome and solve the issue, and then you can debrief about sustainability and how that connects. There's a blog I wrote about the equidistance activity, which is from a sun, moon, earth game that we used to play to talk about the solar system. But it's about the indirect and direct influence of your actions on others, and brings up a good conversation about sustainability.
And all this makes me think just real quick about, I teach a whole grad class on human behavior in the environment and why we do or don't engage in pro-environmental behavior. And for me, one of the crushing things for me is to realize that education really doesn't matter, to be honest. I know as an environmental educator and somebody who's worked in the camp world for years before going to grad school, I'm like, no, but it's context. It's all these normative influences and the contextual things that both of you are talking about, whether it's teen counselors, whoever, that really are going to matter. So you can't just teach them to do the right thing. You have to empower them, or sleazily, as you said, Elise, convince them that there's other reasons they should be doing it. But once that becomes the norm, then it just takes off on its own. And just, you can't rely exclusively on education and trainings and hope that that's going to change the way they're acting, because it won't.
Yeah.
Great point.
So I support the sleazy method.
We're exploring
So
all
does
avenues
research,
necessary. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging back a little bit with me. This was like it's really great to just like see research and like talk to people who are interested in the same exact thing that I am. So that's super cool.
Awesome. Yeah. And at least let's keep the conversation going. I'd love to learn more about your efforts and what's working and how we can support you as well.
Yay. All right. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks, Elise.
Bye.
Lincoln, thank you again so much.